Ludvig, thank you so much for joining me today. Congratulations on Death Stranding 2. It comes out this actually I think tomorrow, it's a couple days from now. Um
Yeah, no, tomorrow I believe over here in Japan at the very least.
Tomorrow today. Yeah, you're in a whole other world. Composer, of course, for Death Stranding 2. Tell me a little bit about what it means for you to come back for the franchise.
Well, obviously it's a huge thing to have, a sequel come out to something that we created from the ground up with the first one and having been part of creating that world all the way from, creating a studio and building a team and doing the first one and then going through COVID and everything and the game getting more and more recognition and then going into doing a sequel and 6 years down the line now having that come out is huge. It's to me yeah, monumental basically.
So being that you created that from the ground up, let's begin with the basics, the foundations of your inspirations for the game itself.
Yeah, well, obviously Hideo had a bunch of ideas going into it that he was feeding me with different movie soundtracks and stuff like that, with the very core of it being analog synths and stuff like that, which was, at the time we'd done Metal Gear before that, which is a completely different soundscape and approach to music. So it was really refreshing to have something completely different to bite into. And yeah, with it being completely new, it also meant that I had a lot more freedom in coming up with my own timbres and going beyond what Hideo initially came up with and those ideas and building that world of its own. And yeah, we took our good time. We took a good bit of time to create that first one and come up with all the ideas. I think I've been quoted saying a bunch of times that the majority of the soundtrack and score for the first one really came together during the last year and a half of production because I'd been trying out a bunch of stuff and figuring out what actually what it meant to create something that would be bespoke and true to the character of this world of Death Stranding. So yeah, it was excuse me, really a lot of trying things out and coming up with that. And now going into the sequel, we have that base to build off of, but we obviously wanted to go beyond that. So that's what the big challenge for the sequel was.
So what were some of the things that you did in the first game that you wanted to expand now in the second one?
Well, I think one of the things that I really found interesting about the sound for the first one was the marriage of analog and digital and then human things. I talked a lot about using analog synths and then using all these found sounds. Like we went to Home Depot and got a bunch of crap and just recorded banging that shit together and creating these instruments out of that and using those layered on top of the synths was sort of this connection between the two different types of sounds, like real sounds and made up sounds, basically. And that's something that I wanted to expand upon for the second one, which we did with more human voices, and we did these sessions recording avant-garde, weird vocalizations, undulations, and just weird stuff that I then resampled and used for a bunch of the music in the game. Yeah, that's sort of the core of sort of conceptually what I wanted to expand upon for the second one.
Now, I mean, once you establish a foundation and a base, it needs to become a familiar sound because I mean, if there's for example, a Death Stranding 3 and or going forward, you kind of when you hear it and maybe a trailer or something, you want to be familiarized with it because a fan base is gonna, oh yeah, obviously recognize that sound. What were some of the things from the first game and now the second game that you find that are going to be able to be very familiar for fans of the game?
Well, I mean, it's always about like just uh how you feel going into writing music and as long as that is really it's as long as you're really just connected with the piece of art that you're working on, I think there's always a direct connection that helps you mold the sound to where it needs to be. But I that's sort of a gibberish answer to the question. I think one of the most interesting parts about the sound of Death Stranding is that it's very eclectic, especially due to all these artists that Hideo bring on for the licensed music. And we go from very wide angles and different types of sounds, and tying all that together, while still, feeling like one game is sort of the thing that I think has been one of the bigger challenges, and that also should resonate as the core sound of Death Stranding. I know it sounds kind of weird to have it be like the sound of Death Stranding is super wide, so it could be basically be anything. And that's what makes it the Death Stranding sound. Uh, might sound kind of weird, but I think it just, with the journey that you're taking during these games with like 60 to 70 hours, depending on how long it's taking, that really it's needed,
Mm.
to really help you connect with the game to a different level. And yeah, throughout that, I don't know if people might still, grab onto some of the synth timbres that I use and stuff like that, but I do think that that whole the width of everything sort of helps um tie it together, rather than, you have like the pop stuff on over here, and then you have the synth stuff for the cutscenes or enemy interaction, stuff like that over there. That's not what I wanted to go for. Rather a spectrum in between, and also, the artists also do a bunch of different stuff that might be closer to rock, might be closer to pop, and yeah, trying to tie that all together is sort of the goal.
Now you've worked on also I believe Boy Kills World, so you really expanded what you can do. How is it different to approach a video game when it comes to composing? Like what are some of the keys there?
Well, every project is different, every director is different, every type of media is different, of course. I think just going from the first Death Stranding to the second one was obviously a huge difference in its experience for me, as I was in-house with Kojima Productions for the second one and then freelance for this one. So in a way, you could almost say that working on something like Boy Kills World was closer to working on Death Stranding 2, rather than, Death Stranding 1 and 2 being closer to each other. But working on a film, obviously, there are the obvious things, like you're waiting for a picture to get locked. Basically, all the scenes are in place, and they basically look like what they're going to look in the final version. Whereas with games, you might be working off of spreadsheets almost sometimes, but generally you're working with moods rather than set pieces that
Mm.
are, especially with Kojima games, we're always expanding on the ideas of emergent gameplay, giving the player choice as to how they approach any type of situation. So that's obviously huge different, working in anything that's more linear, like films or anime or um, drama, TV shows or whatever. So those are big differences, but I think at the end of the day, it just comes down to who you're working with and how they approach direction, and how the production basically is set up, which again is very different from Hollywood to working in Japan, for example.
Yeah, and I mean when you're doing video games, a lot of times the music needs to um what's the word I'm looking for? Not not exemplify. There's a word I'm looking for. I can't believe I just lost it. It's somewhere in the ether. Um, Complement. It needs to complement a player to whatever task that they're in. So I think that yeah, that's really interesting. I know that a lot of times like as tension builds up and you're trying to do something, if the music is right there with me, it can be very, very thrilling and it can add so much more to the experience.
Absolutely. Yeah, having music be informative is obviously very important for video games, letting you know whether the enemy knows where you're at or not, how intense the situation should be, like, or if you're taking damage or whatever. I think one of the things I wanted to try to do for the second one is go beyond that and also let the music stand on its own as music, more so than just being informative, and trying to do more musically creative things, which is not to say that the first one didn't have that, but I think I leaned into a bit more on the ambient side for the first one compared to my musical approach for the second one, which, yeah, I hope people are gonna enjoy for the soundtrack when that comes out.
Yeah, I mean, video game soundtracks are so great to have on, and I think the Death Stranding too, based on what I've seen so far, it'd be really great just to have out in the background, just to be listening to. It's very. Sometimes I've some of the pieces I found actually very soothing, it's a good time. Any piece in particular, any part of the game that you're that you want us to look out for that you're kind of like, yes, this is my favorite part? I mean, I know they're all it's all your baby.
No, so I've gotten that question a few times, and I do want to change up my answer every so often. There are some character themes that I've talked about in other interviews that I'm really proud of. Like Luca Marinelli's character Neil is one of them, where his theme and presentation of his character evolves throughout the game. So that's one. But I also want to give a shout out to some of the boss battle music for the beach thing BT bosses for this game. I wanted to, again, with the thought of trying to do something more musical in a way. I wrote these pieces in a more, uh, I guess, operatic, like ebb and flow kind of way. And I really love just listening to those pieces on their own. They're supposed to give you sort of a eldritch god sort of impression from these bosses rather than being like action, action, action. So I really hope that comes through in the end product. We did work a lot around how to approach the mix for that because it's more about telling a story rather than just letting you know that this thing is dangerous or scary or whatever.
Okay. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Now, the last question I want to ask you, kind of probably thing that I was curious about the most,
Mhm.
is really your approach from the beginning. This is a very, very unique game. It's very cinematic. It's beautiful. It's different. I mean, it takes a little while to necessarily figure out. I remember when I first saw the first trailer way back when, I was like, what is happening? As a composer, day one, how do you start a project like that? How do you as your what is your workflow as far as getting started with something so unique?
I mean, I'm in a weird and rare and to me very precious position in that I've been working with Hideo Kojima for almost 15 years, I guess now, and sort of get his mind in a way, or at least, I've familiarized myself with his thinking and working on the first game, being the audio director on that as well, also led to me having a lot of insight to the process from the very get-go. But for this second one, I also got the chance to do some of the stuff that I did for the first one and going to the performance capture sessions and working a bit with the actors, giving them some music to listen to during, we were acting out scenes and also firing off sound effects for them to react off of. But being there for that process and sort of in a very easy way, just diving deeper into the story and getting to know it without reading through scripts and stuff like that, but rather getting to know it with the actors at the time, with Hideo in the room giving direction and everything, sort of definitely helps and have helped me throughout the process of coming into the second one and figuring out what the story is going to be, and then just having that and then being able to go like, okay, so what do we do different this time around? But yeah, just organically getting to be part of the production in a way where it's not just, as a freelance composer, there's a lot of times where you're sort of disconnected from the project, but having that background, I think we definitely were able to have a more organic approach to everything from the very get-go.
Ludwig, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you taking a few minutes to talk the Stranding 2 and all your work on it. Congratulations again, and I hope to talk to you again soon.
Thank you. Have a good
Take care. It
day.
was nice to virtually meet you.